My name is Sophie, and I am 32 years old. As the eldest child in my family, I have always lived in the shadow of my younger brother Ethan. Throughout our lives, my parents made it clear who their favourite was, but nothing prepared me for what happened at my birthday dinner last month. In a crowded restaurant, my mother leaned over and whispered, "You're jealous of your brother," and then with a smirk added, "Then let him pay for you." Before I tell you how I finally stood up for myself after 32 years, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and subscribe to hear more stories about healing from family trauma. I grew up in a picturesque suburb in Connecticut with what looked like the perfect family from the outside. My father was a successful surgeon at the Regional Medical Center, and my mother built a reputation as one of the most formidable corporate attorneys in the state. We lived in a beautiful colonial home with a manicured lawn, took luxurious vacations twice a year, and attended all the right social events. To neighbors and friends, we epitomized the American dream. I was their first child, and for 4 years I had their undivided attention. I have faded memories of those early years, cuddling with my mum as she read me bedtime stories, and my dad taking me to the local park every Sunday. That all changed when my brother Ethan was born. I remember the day my parents brought Ethan home from the hospital. They placed him in my arms and told me I was a big sister now, with all the responsibilities that came with it. At 4 years old, I was excited to have a playmate, but I had no idea how dramatically my life was about to change. The shift was subtle at first. My mother spent more time with Ethan, which made sense since he was a newborn who needed constant care. But as months turned into years, I noticed the difference in how they treated us. When I lost my first tooth, I got $1 under my pillow. When Ethan lost his, he got 20. For my 7th birthday, I received a stuffed animal I had been asking for. For Ethan's 7th birthday, he got a brand new bicycle and a massive party with a hired magician and a bounce house. When I brought home straight A's on my report card, my parents would nod approvingly and say, "That's what we expect from you, Sophie." But when Ethan brought home C's and a single B, they would celebrate by taking him out for ice cream, praising him for his improvement and hard work. "Boys need more encouragement," my mother would explain when I questioned the disparity. "Girls are naturally more studious and independent." My father would add, "Your brother needs more support to succeed. You are already doing so well on your own." Their justifications never made the inequality feel right, but as a child I accepted their explanations and tried harder to please them. I threw myself into academics, extracurriculars, and anything else that might win their approval. I joined the debate team, played volleyball, volunteered at the local animal shelter, and maintained a perfect GPA, all while helping around the house and being the responsible child they expected me to be. The pattern continued throughout our childhood, with Ethan receiving the lion's share of attention, resources, and forgiveness. When he broke an expensive vase while playing ball in the house, my parents laughed it off as boys being boys. When I accidentally stained the carpet with watercolors during an art project, I was grounded for a week and had to pay for professional cleaning from my allowance. But the most glaring example of their favoritism came during my high school graduation. I was valedictorian of my class, had secured a partial scholarship to NYU, and was preparing to give the commencement speech. The night before graduation, we had a family dinner and my parents presented me with a beautiful but modest watch. "We are so proud of you, Sophie," they said. "This is to remind you that time is precious." I was grateful for the gift until 3 weeks later, when Ethan passed his sophomore year with barely passing grades. My parents surprised him with a brand new car, despite the fact that he had failed 2 classes and had to attend summer school. "He needs motivation to do better next year," my mother explained when she saw my face fall. "This will give him something to strive for." I said nothing, but the message was clear. My achievements were expected. His mediocrity was rewarded. Throughout these years, my saving grace was my best friend Amanda. She came from a family where both children, regardless of gender, were treated equally. She was the first one to point out that the way my parents treated me wasn't normal. "That's messed up, Sophie," she would say after witnessing yet another instance of obvious favoritism. "You know that, right? Your parents shouldn't have such different standards for you and your brother." Amanda became my emotional support, the person who validated my feelings when my parents dismissed them. Her home became my refuge, a place where I was valued simply for being myself rather than for what I achieved. Despite the constant reminders that I would never measure up to my brother in my parents' eyes, I loved Ethan. He was a cheerful, easygoing kid who wasn't deliberately trying to hurt me. He didn't ask for the preferential treatment, and in many ways I felt sorry for him growing up without proper boundaries or realistic expectations. Our relationship was complicated, a mix of normal sibling rivalry and the unnatural competition our parents had created between us. By the time I graduated high school, I had developed a fierce independence and determination to succeed without my parents' support. I had learned that I could not count on them to treat me fairly, so I would make my own way in the world. This resolve would carry me through the challenges ahead, but the pain of their favoritism left scars that would take years to heal. My college years at NYU marked the beginning of my truly independent life. While many of my classmates had parents helping with tuition, room and board, or at least living expenses, I was largely on my own. My parents' contribution covered about a quarter of my tuition, but everything else from textbooks to housing to food came from my scholarship student loans and the 2 part-time jobs I juggled between classes. Meanwhile, Ethan was accepted into an expensive private university despite his mediocre high school performance. My parents not only paid his full tuition, but also set him up in a comfortable off-campus apartment and provided him with a generous monthly allowance. When I called home during my sophomore year, stressed about making rent while maintaining my GPA, my mother suggested I budget better or find a higher-paying job. "You know we are already stretched thin with Ethan's education," she said, despite the family vacation to Europe they had just taken without me because I chose to take summer classes instead of joining them. I graduated with honours and nearly $30,000 in student debt. Ethan changed his major 3 times, took 6 years to graduate with a below-average GPA, and walked away debt-free. At his graduation dinner, my father toasted all the challenges my brother had overcome, while my mother wiped away tears of pride. My own graduation dinner a few years earlier had been a rushed affair at a chain restaurant scheduled around my father's golf tournament. Despite these obstacles, or perhaps because of them, I threw myself into building my career. I started at an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Manhattan, worked 60-hour weeks, and steadily climbed the corporate ladder. By the time I was 29, I was a senior marketing executive with a team under me and a reputation for delivering results. Ethan, meanwhile, bounced from one venture to another. He tried starting a food delivery app that failed within 6 months. Then he invested in a friend's startup that went bankrupt a year later. After that, he decided to become a day trader, losing a significant amount of money before giving it up. Through each failure, my parents provided financial and emotional support, always ready with encouraging words about valuable experience and the road to success being paved with setbacks. When I was 27 and looking to buy my first apartment, I asked my parents if they would co-sign the mortgage since I had excellent credit, but not enough years of income history. They declined, explaining that they didn't want to get involved in financial entanglements. 3 months later, they purchased a condo for Ethan because, as my mother explained, he needs a stable base while he figures out his career path. The disparity continued in small ways too. At family gatherings, my mother would introduce Ethan to important connections who might help his latest business idea while I was asked to help in the kitchen. My father would discuss investment strategies with my brother, then ask me about my little marketing projects. Holiday and birthday gifts followed the same pattern, with Ethan receiving expensive electronics or designer clothes while I received kitchen appliances or practical items for my home. It was around this time that I met James. We connected at an industry conference where he was representing his tech company. Unlike previous boyfriends who either didn't notice the dynamic with my family or dismissed my feelings about it, James saw the situation clearly from the first time he met my parents. After our first Thanksgiving together, as we drove back to the city, he turned to me and said, "I hope this isn't overstepping, but the way your parents treat you, compared to your brother, is really unfair. I can see why it's been so painful for you." Having someone finally validate what I had felt for decades opened the floodgates. That night, I shared stories I had never told anyone, not even Amanda. James listened, held me, and never once suggested I was exaggerating or being too sensitive, which had been my mother's go-to response whenever I tried to discuss the favoritism. With James' support, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Levine helped me recognize the toxic patterns in my family and understand that my parents' behavior reflected their issues, not my worth as a person. She gave me tools to set boundaries and protect my emotional health while still maintaining a relationship with my family. I tried several times to discuss the favoritism with my parents directly. Each attempt ended the same way, with my mother becoming defensive and my father changing the subject. "You always were such a jealous child, Sophie," my mother would say. "We love you and Ethan equally. It's not our fault if you choose to see everything as a competition." My 30th birthday was particularly painful. My parents organised a dinner at their country club, but the evening somehow turned into a celebration of Ethan's new job. They even brought out a cake that said, "Congratulations, Ethan," alongside my birthday cake, because as my mother explained, it seemed silly to have two separate celebrations so close together. My birthday was on the 15th. Ethan had received his job offer on the 3rd. That night, as James drove us back to our hotel, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer expect my parents to change or to suddenly treat me with the same consideration they showed my brother. Instead, I would focus on building my own life, filled with people who valued me for who I was, not what I achieved, or how I compared to someone else. Little did I know that my 32nd birthday would become the turning point that would forever change my family dynamics. For my 32nd birthday, I decided to try something different. Instead of the usual family dinner that inevitably centered around Ethan, I made reservations at Aurelia, an upscale Italian restaurant in Manhattan, known for its intimate atmosphere and exceptional cuisine. The restaurant had been on my wish list for months, with its critically acclaimed chef and stunning views of the city skyline. Initially, I considered not inviting my family at all. Part of me wanted to celebrate just with James and a few close friends who genuinely cared about me. But another part, the little girl still seeking parental approval, wanted to give them another chance. Perhaps in this setting with my friends present, they would behave differently. "Are you sure you want to invite them?" James asked when I mentioned my plans. He had witnessed enough uncomfortable family gatherings to be wary. "You know how these things usually go." "I know," I sighed, "but they are still my family. And who knows, maybe this time will be different." James squeezed my hand. "Just remember, you don't have to tolerate any disrespect, even from your parents, especially on your birthday." I nodded, appreciating his support, while knowing how difficult it was for me to stand up to my family. Despite years of therapy and personal growth, confrontation with my parents still made me feel like that overlooked little girl. I spent weeks planning every detail of the evening. I reserved a semi-private area with a view of the city lights. I coordinated with the chef to create a special tasting menu that accommodated everyone's dietary preferences. I even arranged for a small but elegant cake from a boutique bakery that specialized in Italian desserts. The guest list was carefully considered: James, of course, Amanda and her husband, 2 colleagues who had become close friends, my cousin Taylor, the only family member who had ever acknowledged the favoritism, and my parents and Ethan. I hesitated before adding Ethan, but excluding him would only create more drama, and despite everything I did, love my brother. As the day approached, I allowed myself to feel genuinely excited. I had achieved so much in my life, despite the lack of support from my parents. I had a fulfilling career, a loving relationship with James' good friends, and a growing sense of self-worth that no longer depended on external validation. This birthday felt symbolic, a celebration not just of another year, but of the strong, independent woman I had become. The evening began better than I had dared to hope. My parents arrived on time, bringing a tasteful gift, a silver photo frame engraved with my initials. My friends created a buffer that seemed to moderate my parents' usual behavior. The first round of cocktails went smoothly, with pleasant conversation about neutral topics like recent films and restaurants everyone had tried. My mother even asked about my recent promotion, listening with what appeared to be genuine interest as I described my new responsibilities. My father complimented the restaurant choice, acknowledging my always discerning taste. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe that perhaps things were changing, that my parents were finally seeing me as an adult worthy of their respect. Then Ethan arrived 45 minutes late. "Sorry, everyone," he announced as he strode to our table, not looking particularly apologetic. Traffic was a nightmare, and I had to finish a call with some investors. My parents immediately perked up. "Investors?" My father asked, all attention now directed toward my brother. Ethan grinned. "Yeah, for my new venture. I was going to wait to announce it, but since we're all here, I might as well share the news." And just like that, my carefully planned birthday dinner shifted focus. Ethan launched into a detailed explanation of his latest business idea, some kind of fitness app that he claimed would revolutionize home workouts. My parents leaned forward, asking questions and offering suggestions, their earlier interest in my career forgotten. I felt James tense beside me. He placed his hand on my knee under the table, a silent show of support. Amanda caught my eye across the table and gave me a sympathetic look that said, "Some things never change." I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I had anticipated this. The old familiar disappointment rose in my chest, but I was determined not to let it ruin my evening. I signaled to the waiter to bring the first course, hoping the food would redirect the conversation. The surprise of the evening was Ethan's new girlfriend Mia, who arrived shortly after him. Unlike his previous girlfriends who either ignored the family dynamics or actively participated in the Ethan worship, Mia seemed to notice the awkward atmosphere. Throughout the meal, I caught her observing the interactions with a slightly furrowed brow, particularly when my mother interrupted me to ask Ethan a question, or when my father mentioned how proud he was of my brother's entrepreneurial spirit. As the main courses arrived, I made another attempt to reclaim my celebration. I asked the waiter to bring a bottle of champagne for a toast. When the champagne was poured, James stood up and raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to Sophie," he said warmly. "To the most remarkable woman I know. Your intelligence, compassion, and strength inspire everyone around you. Happy birthday, sweetheart." My friends enthusiastically joined in adding their own kind words. Even Ethan and Mia raised their glasses with genuine smiles. For a brief moment, I felt truly celebrated. Then my mother cleared her throat and raised her glass again. "And let's not forget to toast Ethan's exciting new venture. To both my children and their successes." The moment was gone. I caught Amanda's eye and she gave a small eye roll that made me feel less alone in noticing what had just happened. I sipped my champagne and reminded myself that in a few hours this would be over, and I could go back to the life I had built apart from my family's dysfunction. Little did I know that the real drama of the evening was yet to come, triggered by something as mundane as the arrival of the check. As our dessert plates were cleared and espressos served, the waiter discreetly placed the leather folder containing our check at the edge of the table. I reached for it automatically, having planned to cover the evening as the host, but my father intercepted it. "Let me see that," he said, opening the folder and studying the total. His eyebrows raised slightly at the amount which I knew would be substantial given the restaurant's reputation and the wine we had enjoyed. "We should split this," my mother suggested, looking around the table. "It's quite a bill," James spoke up. "Actually, I thought Sophie and I would cover it. It's her birthday celebration and she wanted to treat everyone." Before I could thank him for the support, my mother shook her head. "Nonsense. Sophie shouldn't have to pay on her birthday. Your father and I will cover our portion and Ethan's. The rest of you can manage your own." I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. Even in this small moment, they were making it clear that Ethan received their financial support while I was expected to manage on my own, despite it being my birthday dinner that I had organised. "Mum," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I planned this dinner and invited everyone. I'm happy to cover the bill." "But why should you?" she countered. "You work hard for your money, and it's an expensive restaurant." "Because that's what hosts do," I replied, and I wanted to celebrate with everyone. My mother leaned closer to me, lowering her voice, but still audible to those nearby. "The truth is, Sophie, you've always been jealous of your brother. You've always resented any little thing we do for him." The table fell silent. I felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. 28 years of suppressed emotions threatened to erupt at once. James squeezed my hand under the table, grounding me in the moment. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Instead of backing down or recognizing the inappropriateness of her comment, my mother doubled down. With a dismissive smirk that I would never forget, she said, "Then let him pay for you. Would that make you happy?" The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda looked horrified. My father suddenly became very interested in his espresso cup. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, and Mia's eyes widened in shock. My colleagues exchanged glances, clearly wishing they could disappear. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not in a destructive way, but like a dam giving way to years of pent-up truth. I felt a strange calm wash over me, a clarity I had never experienced when confronting my family. I looked directly at my mother, my voice steady, despite the tears forming in my eyes. "This has never been about jealousy, Mom. It's about fairness. It's about wondering why from the time Ethan was born, he has been treated as more valuable, more worthy of support and celebration than me." My mother's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. We've always treated you both equally." I shook my head. "No, you haven't. And I think everyone at this table knows it." I took a deep breath and continued. "I paid my own way through college while you covered all of Ethan's expenses. When I graduated with honors, I got a rush dinner. When Ethan finally graduated after 6 years, you threw a party. When I needed a co-signer for my apartment, you refused. When Ethan needed a place to live, you bought him a condo." My voice remained calm, but I could feel tears streaming down my face now. Tonight you interrupted a toast to me on my birthday to make it about Ethan, and now you're insisting on paying for him, but not for me, while suggesting I'm jealous for noticing the disparity. My father finally looked up, his expression uncomfortable. Sophie, I think you're overreacting. Your mother didn't mean anything by it. I'm not overreacting, Dad. I'm finally reacting. After 32 years of swallowing the hurt, pretending not to notice, making excuses for both of you, I'm finally acknowledging what's been happening my entire life. Ethan, surprising me, spoke up. She's right, Mom and Dad. You've always given me more. I've never said anything because, well, it benefited me. But it's true, and it's not fair to Sophie. My mother turned to Ethan, betrayal evident in her expression. You too, after everything we've done for you. That's exactly her point, Mom, Ethan said quietly. After everything you've done for me, and so little for her in comparison. By now, other diners at nearby tables were trying not to stare, while obviously listening to every word. The waiter hovered uncertainly at a distance, sensing the tension. My mother's face hardened, and she shifted to attack mode. This is how you repay us, with public accusations. You've always been difficult, Sophie. Always demanding, always competing with your brother. We gave you everything you needed. Needed but not wanted, I said. Not what you gave Ethan freely without him having to earn it. Not your unconditional support. James, who had been silently supportive until now, spoke up. With all due respect, Mrs. Parker, I've witnessed the disparity in how you treat your children. Sophie has never criticised you to me, but I've seen her hurt firsthand. All she's ever wanted was to be valued equally. My mother turned her glare on James. This is family business. You have no right to judge us. He's the family I'm choosing, I said, my voice stronger now. He and the friends who support me without conditions, who celebrate my successes without immediately shifting the focus to someone else. I stood up, suddenly needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere. I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that the way you treat me doesn't hurt. I can't keep coming to family gatherings hoping this time will be different, only to leave feeling diminished and unimportant. I reached for my purse and pulled out my credit card, placing it on top of the check. I'm paying for dinner, all of it, not because I'm trying to prove anything, but because that was my plan all along as the host. After tonight, what happens next is up to you, but I won't accept being treated as less than Ethan anymore. I deserve better, and I think deep down you both know that. With that, I walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind a shocked silence and the remnants of my birthday celebration. James quickly settled the bill and followed me, but not before I heard Mia say to Ethan, "Wow, your sister is incredibly brave." It was the first time anyone in my family's orbit had described me that way, and despite everything, it felt like a tiny victory. James and I walked in silence through the Manhattan streets after leaving the restaurant. The crisp evening air cooled my tear-stained face as we made our way past illuminated storefronts and late-night crowds. I felt emotionally drained but also strangely liberated, as if I had finally put down a burden I had been carrying my entire life. "I'm proud of you," James said, finally taking my hand. "What you did back there took incredible courage." "I can't believe I actually did it," I replied, my voice still shaky. 32 years of swallowing my feelings, and I finally said what I've been thinking all this time. "How are you feeling?" he asked, guiding me to a quiet bench in a small park. Honestly, like I might throw up, but also free. I took a deep breath. I don't regret it. Whatever happens next, at least I stood up for myself. We sat together in the park for nearly an hour, processing what had happened. Just as we were preparing to head home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. Can I call you?" I showed the message to James, who squeezed my shoulder supportively. "It's up to you. You don't owe anyone a conversation tonight." I hesitated, then dialed Ethan's number. He answered immediately. "Sophie, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Not just for tonight, but for all of it. For never speaking up when Mum and Dad treated you differently. For accepting all the advantages without questioning why you didn't get the same." His apology caught me off guard. In all our years, Ethan had never acknowledged the disparity in how our parents treated us. "You noticed?" I asked. "Of course I noticed," he said. "I'd have to be completely self-absorbed not to. It was easier not to rock the boat. I was comfortable with the way things were. Because it benefited you," I said, not accusingly but matter-of-factly. "Yes," he admitted. "And that was selfish. I'm not proud of it. We talked for nearly 20 minutes with Ethan, revealing that he had often felt uncomfortable with our parents' favoritism, but had never known how to address it without seeming ungrateful. He confessed that their constant support had actually undermined his confidence, making him doubt whether he could succeed on his own merits. Mia said something that really hit home, he told me. After you left, she said she could never respect someone who accepted preferential treatment at their sister's expense. She said either I was complicit or I was clueless, and neither was a good look. I found myself appreciating Ethan's new girlfriend more with every passing minute. Shortly after hanging up with Ethan, my parents started texting. My mother's messages alternated between anger, "How dare you humiliate us in public," and dismissal, "You're overreacting as usual." My father's tone was more conciliatory but still defensive, suggesting we talk when emotions aren't so high. I turned my phone off for the rest of the night, unwilling to engage with their attempts to minimize what had happened. The next week passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. My parents continued their text campaign, with my mother's messages growing increasingly accusatory, while my father made tentative peace offerings, suggesting lunch to clear the air. I maintained my silence, needing time to process my feelings and determine my boundaries going forward. Ethan called twice more, each conversation more reflective than the last. He seemed to be genuinely reconsidering his role in our family dynamic. 10 days after the birthday dinner, my father called my office, directly bypassing my silenced cell phone. "Sophie?" he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what you said at dinner." I remained silent, waiting. "I want to meet with you. Just the two of us. No excuses, no defenses. I just want to listen to what you have to say." Something in his tone seemed sincere, so I agreed to meet him for coffee the following day at a neutral location away from both our workplaces. Our conversation was difficult but surprisingly productive. For perhaps the first time, my father truly listened as I calmly detailed the pattern of favoritism I had experienced growing up. I shared specific memories, the disparate reactions to our report cards, the car versus the watch, the condo versus the refused cosign. "I never saw it that way," he said, looking genuinely troubled. "I always thought we were responding to your different needs. You were so capable, so independent. Ethan seemed to need more guidance, more support. Did it ever occur to you that I was independent because I had to be?" I asked. "That I learned early on not to ask for help because it rarely came." I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. "We failed you," he said finally. "Not in providing for your basic needs, but in making you feel equally valued. I can't change the past, Sophie, but I want to do better going forward." My mother proved less receptive to introspection. When I finally agreed to speak with her over the phone, she maintained that I had always been jealous of my brother and was making mountains out of molehills. When I calmly recounted specific instances of favoritism, she became defensive, accusing me of keeping a petty scorecard of perceived slights. "If that's how you choose to see your childhood, that's your problem," she said dismissively. "We gave you everything you needed to succeed, and instead of being grateful, you're attacking us." Her response, while painful, confirmed what my therapist had long suggested: my mother was unlikely to ever acknowledge her role in creating our dysfunctional family dynamic. Interestingly, the fallout from my birthday confrontation rippled through our extended family. My aunt, my mother's sister, called to express her support. "I've seen how they treat you, compared to Ethan, for years," she confided. "I've tried to bring it up with your mother, but she always shuts me down. What you did took courage, Sophie. It was long overdue." My cousin Taylor reached out as well, sharing that my stand had inspired her to address similar issues in her relationship with her parents. Even my grandmother, usually careful to remain neutral in family disputes, sent me a card with a simple message: "It's never too late to speak your truth. I'm proud of you." The most surprising development was Ethan's transformation. Our relationship, once strained by the unnatural competition our parents had created, began to evolve into something more authentic. Without our parents' influence dictating our interactions, we discovered common ground and genuine sibling affection. "I want to stand on my own feet," he told me during one of our now regular coffee meetings. "I'm turning down Mom and Dad's offer to invest in my new business. If it succeeds, I want it to be because of my own efforts, not their money." For the first time, I felt proud of my brother, not for what he had been given, but for what he was choosing to do on his own. The first family gathering after the incident was Thanksgiving, held at my parents' home as always. I debated not attending, but ultimately decided to go with James firmly by my side. The atmosphere was tense, with my mother making pointed remarks about certain people who create drama, and my father trying too hard to engage me in conversation. When my mother attempted to re-establish old patterns asking me to help in the kitchen while Ethan and my father watched football, I simply said, "I'd rather watch the game too. Why don't we all take turns helping with dinner prep?" Her tight-lipped expression spoke volumes, but she didn't argue. Small victories. By Christmas, I had made the decision to prioritize my own well-being over family tradition. Instead of attending the annual Parker family gathering, James and I booked a trip to a small beach resort in Mexico. It was the first Christmas I had ever spent away from my family, and it was gloriously peaceful. I sent gifts to my parents, and Ethan called on Christmas morning to wish everyone well, and then spent the day swimming, reading, and enjoying James's company without the undercurrent of tension that had always characterized family holidays. My mother's disapproving comments about abandoning family traditions rolled off me with surprising ease. I was learning that I could acknowledge her feelings without accepting responsibility for them, a crucial distinction my therapist had been helping me understand. 6 months after my birthday confrontation, I sat in Dr. Levine's office for my weekly therapy session, reflecting on how much had changed in such a relatively short time. "I feel like a different person," I told her. "Not because the past has changed, but because I'm no longer letting it dictate my future." Dr. Levine smiled. "You've done the hard work of examining those old wounds without letting them define you. That's no small achievement, Sophie." Kaitem. Indeed, the past months had been a journey of emotional processing and boundary setting. Each week brought new challenges, but also new insights. I had days of doubt when I questioned whether confronting my family had been worth the upheaval, but these were outnumbered by days of clarity and growing confidence. My relationship with Ethan had evolved in ways I never expected. Without our parents manipulating our interactions, we discovered a genuine sibling bond. He called regularly to share updates on his business, which he was building, without our parents' financial backing. We even collaborated professionally when his fitness app needed marketing expertise. I never realized how much I was missing by accepting Mom and Dad's version of our relationship. Ethan told me during one of our lunch meetings. "Having a real relationship with you based on mutual respect instead of competition feels so much healthier." His girlfriend Mia had become a surprising ally in maintaining this new dynamic. She had no patience for my mother's attempts to re-establish the old patterns and often redirected conversations when they veered into familiar, dangerous territory. My father had made consistent, if sometimes awkward, attempts to repair our relationship. He began calling me directly about once a week just to check in. These conversations were initially strained, but gradually developed into meaningful exchanges. He asked questions about my work, my interests, my perspectives, often seeming surprised by my answers, as if realizing for the first time how little he knew about the woman his daughter had become. For Mother's Day, instead of the usual family brunch, he suggested meeting me for coffee, just the two of us. "I want to apologize properly," he said, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. Not with excuses or justifications, but simply to acknowledge that I failed you in important ways. He went on to explain that he had been reading about family dynamics and favoritism, trying to understand the patterns that had shaped our family. "I always thought your mother was the one with strong opinions about how we should raise you both," he admitted. "But I've realized that by staying silent, by going along with her decisions, I was equally responsible. I failed to advocate for you when you needed me to." This acknowledgement, delivered without expectation of immediate forgiveness, meant more to me than any gift he could have given. It validated what I had felt for decades and offered a foundation for rebuilding trust. My mother's evolution was less dramatic but still significant in its own way. While she never fully admitted to the favoritism, she did begin to make small adjustments in how she interacted with me. She made efforts to ask about my work, to acknowledge my achievements, without immediately changing the subject to Ethan. When she slipped into old habits, she sometimes caught herself a flicker of awareness crossing her face. During one Sunday phone call, she mentioned that she had been going through old photo albums. "I noticed something strange," she said. "After Ethan was born, there are so many pictures of him and so few of you. I don't think I ever realized that before." It wasn't an apology, but it was a recognition of something tangible, something real. For my mother, that was significant progress. While working on family relationships, I also focused on strengthening the positive connections in my life. James and I grew closer through the challenges, his unwavering support helping me navigate the complicated emotions that surfaced. When he proposed during a quiet evening at home, I accepted without the shadow of doubt that might have plagued me before. "I want to build a family with you," he said as he slipped the ring on my finger. A family where everyone feels valued, where love isn't conditional, where support is given freely. His understanding of what I needed to hear in that moment, his recognition of the family wounds I was still healing from, confirmed what I already knew. He was my partner in every sense of the word. As we began discussing our future children, I found myself thinking deeply about breaking toxic cycles. I was determined that any child of mine would never question their worth or feel they had to earn their parents' love through achievement. My therapy sessions increasingly focused on how to prevent unconsciously replicating the patterns I had grown up with. Awareness is the first step, Dr. Levine assured me. The fact that you're asking these questions, that you're conscious of these patterns, means you're already on a different path than your parents were. My professional life flourished alongside my personal growth. The confidence that came from standing in my truth extended to my work, where I found myself taking more creative risks and speaking up more assertively in meetings. This led to a significant promotion, placing me in the executive leadership team of our company, an achievement my younger self would have desperately wanted to share with my parents to finally earn their approval. Instead, when I called to share the news, it was simply to share my joy, not to seek validation. My father expressed genuine pride, asking thoughtful questions about my new responsibilities. My mother offered congratulations that seemed sincere, if somewhat restrained. Their reaction, positive or otherwise, no longer determined how I felt about my accomplishments. I had learned to celebrate myself, to recognize my own worth without external validation. This perhaps was the most profound change of all. As the one-year anniversary of my birthday confrontation approached, I decided to mark it not as a reminder of conflict, but as a celebration of growth. I planned a small gathering at my apartment with the people who had supported me through this year of transformation: James, Amanda, my cousin Taylor, a few close friends, and yes, Ethan and Mia. Noticeably absent were my parents. Not because I hadn't forgiven them or because I was cutting them out of my life, but because I was learning to cultivate relationships that added positivity to my life, while maintaining appropriate boundaries with those that didn't. The evening was filled with laughter, good food, and genuine connection. As I looked around at the faces of people who loved me for exactly who I was, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had created this circle of authentic relationships, this chosen family that supplemented the complicated one I was born into. Later that night, after everyone had left and James and I were cleaning up, he asked, "Do you regret it, speaking up that night?" I considered the question carefully. "Not for a second," I replied. "It was painful and messy, and the aftermath hasn't always been easy, but it was necessary. I spent 32 years trying to earn unconditional love that should have been freely given. I don't want to spend the next 32 doing the same." I had come to understand that my parents' behavior reflected their own limitations, not my worth. My mother's need to control my father's conflict avoidance, their shared tendency to take the path of least resistance, by catering to Ethan's demands, all these patterns had existed long before I was born. I was not their cause, merely their recipient. This realization brought compassion alongside my boundaries. I could maintain a relationship with my parents while accepting their imperfections and protecting myself from their harmful patterns. I could love them without needing them to be different, while still requiring that they treat me with respect. A year ago, standing up to my mother in that restaurant had seemed like an ending, a rupture in my family. Now I understood it had actually been a beginning, the first step toward authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than outdated roles and expectations. Sometimes a single moment of courage, a decision to finally speak your truth, can transform a lifetime of pain into an opportunity for growth. My journey wasn't over, the healing wasn't complete, but I was no longer stuck in patterns that diminished me. I had found my voice, and with it, my freedom. Have you ever had to confront a family member about unfair treatment? How did it change your relationship? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even when, especially when it's your family you're standing up to.